Are you a turtle?
Lady Velcour asks.
Huh?
Danny Pricefixer responds.
Never mind.
She says hurriedly. He hears her asking the next man on the right.
Are you a turtle?
We can send the army to the west side of the lake to intercept them,
said Wilhelm.
9,
said Wolfgang, who was standing in the rear of the slowly moving command car, studying the situation through field glasses.
That verdammte bridge goes towards the northern shore of the lake. They can go straight, while our men go around. They'd all be across before we could reach them.
We could shell the bridge from here,
said Werner.
We daren't use the artillery,
said Wolfgang.
We'd have the whole West German army blundering down here, getting in the way of our drive to the east. If the West Germans start fighting us, the East Germans will not make the mistake we want them to make. They won't think we are an invading West German army. The Russians, in turn, will have plenty of warning. The whole plan will fall through.
Let's skip this phase, then,
said Winifred.
It's too much of a hassle. Let's head immediately eastward, and the hell with these kids.
9 again, dear sister, my love,
said Wolfgang.
We have 23 candidates for transcendental illumination, including Hitler himself, waiting up there in the old Führer suite of the Donau Hotel. The speedy mass termination of all those lives is to translate them to eternal life on the energy plane. And I will not let that Scheißkopf Hagbar Schelin thwart us at this juncture. I mean to show him once and for all which of us is master. And all the rest of those Schweinen, Dillinger, the Dalai Lama, Melakalypse, the old lady herself if she's here. If all of them are here, it's our chance to make a clean sweep and annihilate the opposition once and for all, at the beginning of the amenitizing of the eschaton, rather than in the final stage.
But we can't catch the kids,
said Wilhelm.
We can. We shall. It will take a long, long time to move them all across that pontoon bridge, and they're all on foot. We have vehicles and can catch up with them before half of them are even on the bridge. They'll all be bunched together, and those on the bridge will be a perfect target for machine guns. We shall simply sweep in on them, harvesting their lives as we go. We spent years building up our identity as the American Medical Association, just so we could organize the Ingolstadt Festival and trap masses of human beings on the shore of Lake Totenkopf, that our sacred lake might run red with their blood. Would you throw all that away?
I agree. A brilliant analysis,
said Wilhelm.
We must move on at full speed, then,
said Wolfgang. He turned to the car behind him and shouted,
Forwards! At maximum speed!
General of the SS Hanfgeist stood up, turned toward his subordinates, and moved his blackened lips to form the same words. Immediately the tanks, half-tracks, motorcycles, and armored cars began to rev up their engines, and the troops started to trot down the road on the double. A lookout in one of the festival light and sound towers spotted them and relayed a warning to the stage, where Robert Pearson spoke into a microphone.
It is my sad duty to inform you that the pigs are intensifying their approach. Now, don't run, but do quicken your pace with all deliberate speed.
Hagbard called in through the doorway of the gold tent.
"John, you've had enough for Discordia's sake. Come on out and let Malaclips go in."
I thought you were non-corporeal,
said George.
"If you'd known me for any length of time, you would have noticed that I frequently pick my nose,"
said the Sartre-like apparition.
"Ooh,"
said John Dillinger, emerging from the tent.
"Who would have thought the old man had so much come in him? She says she wants George in there after Mal."
The woman behind the veil was glowing. There was no light in the tent, save for the deep golden radiance that came from her body.
"Come closer, George,"
she said.
"I don't want you to make love to me now. I only want you to learn the truth. Stand here before me."
The woman behind the veil was Mavis.
"Mavis, I love you,"
said George.
"I've loved you ever since you took me out of that jail in Mad Dog."
"Look again, George,"
said Stella.
"Stella? What happened to Mavis?"
"I circle around. I circle around."
"Don't play games with yourself, George. You know perfectly well that a moment ago I was Mavis."
"It's the acid,"
said George.
"The acid only opens your eyes, George. It doesn't work miracles,"
said Miss Mao.
"I circle around. I circle around."
"Oh, my God,"
said George, and he thought,
"And it shall come to pass that whosoever shall call on the name of the Lord shall be saved."
Mavis was there again.
"Do you understand, George? Do you understand why you never saw all of us together at once? Do you understand why, all the time you wanted to fuck me, that when you were fucking Stella, you were fucking me? And do you understand that I'm not one woman, or 3 women, but an infinite number of women?"
Before his eyes she turned red, yellow, black, brown, young, middle-aged, a child, an old woman, a Norwegian blonde, a Sicilian brunette, a wild-eyed Greek woman, a tall Ashanti, a slant-eyed Maasai, a Japanese, a Chinese, a Vietnamese, and on and on and on. The pale face kept turning colors, the way people do when you're on peyote. Now he looked almost like an Indian. That's what made it easier to talk to him. Why shouldn't people turn colors? All the trouble in the world came from the fact that they usually stayed the same color. James nodded profoundly. As usual, peyote had brought him a big truth. If whites and blacks and Indians were turning colors all the time, there wouldn't be any hate in the world, because nobody would know which people to hate.
"Who the hell's mind was that?"
George wondered. The tent was dark. He looked around for the woman. He rushed out of the tent. No one was looking at him. They were all, Hagbard and the rest of them, staring in awe at a colossal figure that grew ever taller as it strode away from them. It was a golden woman in golden robes, with wild gold, red, black hair flowing free. She stepped over the fence that guarded the festival grounds as casually as if it were the threshold of a door. She towered over the Bavarian pines. In her left hand, she carried an enormous golden orb. Hagbard put his hand on George's shoulder.
"It is possible,"
he said,
"to achieve transcendental illumination through a multiplicity of orgasms as well as through a multiplicity of deaths."
There were lights advancing down the road. The woman, now 93 feet tall, strode toward those lights. She laughed, and the laughter echoed across Lake Totenkopf.
"Great Gruad, what's that?"
cried Werner.
"It's the old woman!"
shouted Wolfgang, his lips falling away from his teeth in a snarl. The sudden cry, Callisti, reverberated through the Bavarian hills louder than the music of the Ingolstadt festival had been. Trailing a comet-like cloud of sparks, the golden apple fell into the center of the advancing army. The super-Nazis might have been the living dead, but they were still human. What each man saw in the apple was his heart's desire. Private Heinrich Kraus saw the family he had left behind 30 years ago, not knowing that his living grandchildren were at this moment on the pontoon bridge across Lake Totenkopf, fleeing his advance. Corporal Gottfried Kuntz saw his mistress, who in reality had been raped and then disemboweled by Russian soldiers when Berlin fell in 1945. Oberlieutenant Sigmund Vogel saw a ticket to the Wagner festival at Bayreuth. Colonel SS Conrad Schein saw 100 Jews lined up before a machine gun that awaited his hand on the trigger. Obergruppenführer Ernst Bickler saw a blue china soup tureen standing in an empty fireplace at his grandmother's house in Kassel. It was a brimful of steaming brown dog shit into which was plunged a silver spoon. General Humpfgeist saw Adolf Hitler, his face blackened, his eyes and tongue bulging out, his neck broken, spinning at the end of a hangman's rope. All of the men who saw the apple, in whatever form, began to fight and kill one another for possession. Tanks smashed into one another head-on. Artillerymen lowered the barrels of their guns and fired point-blank into the center of the melee.
"What is it, Wolfgang?"
said Winifred imploringly, her arms thrown in panic around his waist.
"Look into the center of the battle,"
said Wolfgang grimly.
"What do you see?"
"I see the throne of the world. One single chair, 23 feet off the ground, studded with 17 rubies, and brooding over it, the serpent swallowing its tail, the rosy cross, and the eye. I see that throne, and know that I alone am to ascend it, and occupy it forever. What do you see?"
"I see Hagbard Celine's Teufelsscheiß head on a silver platter."
Wolfgang snarled, thrusting her from him with trembling hands.
"Ares has thrown the apple of discord, and our super Nazis will fight and kill each other until we destroy it."